about 9 or 10 years old, my only experience with snakes was pictures in books, mainly talking about how to avoid the poisonous ones. He did mention Boy Scouts. I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, so that's primarily the books I was reading. And growing up in the mountains of Montana, I really haven't had much experience with a snake. I've never seen one in the wild, you know, when it's kind of freezing cold out there, kind of hiding. But one hot afternoon, because like most boys, I took care of the yard. I was out there wielding a large gas-powered weed eater. I had the big earmuffs on to drown out the engine noise, feeling a bit like Tim the Toolman Taylor, all loaded up, ready to take on anything that stood in my way. I was slashing away at the weeds and tall grass that escaped the mower blades in front of a chokecherry bush in the backyard, when this large green thing starts slithering out from in front of the bush in front of me, straight between my legs. My brain registers, snake! And my body responds as if there's a saber-toothed tiger jumping out of that bush in front of me. I let go of that machine and I jumped from in front of that bush to the top of the deck, 50 feet away and 10 feet off the ground. Looking back, I saw the weed eater hit the ground. I was either channeling Superman or the Flash to be able to go that fast. It was not my finest hour. And unfortunately, it was not my last experience with a snake. However, I still get that initial jolt whenever I see one in the wild. But, you know, we have an understanding now. They go their way, and I'm going in the opposite direction. This was really my first time that I came face to face with the BUSM. The big, ugly, scary monster, fear. Now, our animal instincts are still alive and well within us. However, they have not kept up with the times. We are no longer surrounded every day by things that want to eat us or maim us. Unless you count the times that you actually sit down and climb behind the wheel and strap on that hunk of metal and go flying down the road at speeds that would scare the pants off your great-grandparents. 99% of the time, we work and live in an environment that is safe and secure. But those instincts are still there, and they're still operating and reacting to things that are happening or perceived to be happening around us. Public speaking is a perfectly good example. Have you ever heard of someone actually dying from giving a speech? Now, there have been a few politicians just been shot because they were giving a speech, but not because of actually presenting the speech. Yet it strikes panic and trembling into people. I mean, we've all seen it when a new member stands up in front of the room and struggles to get through their first speech, right? The same is true every time you step outside your comfort zone. That big, ugly, scary monster rears up and taps you on the shoulder and says, boo. And it frequently causes us to retreat back where we feel safe into our comfort zone. You know that feeling when doubt starts creeping up the back of your spine and that little voice in your head starts to whisper misgivings about your current course of action. The problem is, you can't grow inside your comfort zone. You see, the growth zone is just on the other side of that barrier. And getting over that wall takes guts and determination. It takes even more to stay in the growth zone. What we need to do is actually understand what's inside that monster suit. When we stop and think about it, what is fear? It's actually an unconscious reaction to perceived threats, right? What is the purpose of fear? It's to keep us safe, to keep us from getting hurt, right? So where else in the world does this happen? When you're in that hunk of metal driving down the road, how do the powers that be notify you of a potentially hazardous situation? They put up a sign. Now, some of them are relatively minor, like bump or dip. And then there are the other major ones, like the railroad crossings, that have the big lights and crossing guards that come down and even prevent you from proceeding. But fear is just that, a warning sign. And most of the time, because of our 99% safe environment, it's a minor thing that is a minor threat. It's really not something that we need to get all worked up about. However, that's what physically happens inside of us. Our body responds as if there's a do not enter sign, and we frequently do what? Turn tail and run back to our comfort zone. Now, I don't have time to go into all of the details about why this is the case. It's primarily related to our beliefs and programming. So how do we make this big, ugly, scary monster our friend? First, by recognizing it what it is, a warning. Acknowledging it is also key. Because many times we see the signs, with the warning sign going off, but we pretend to ignore it. And you know what? That big, ugly, scary monster is going to continue until he gets your attention. So we need to acknowledge him. Secondly, we need to consciously assess the risk. Fear is an unconscious response. By consciously recognizing and assessing the risk, we identify the type of warning that's going on. Is it something major that's going to really hurt us, or is it something that will cause us to grow? Once we do that, the monster is usually pacified and he goes back to his cave. Thirdly, train him. Yes, you can train your monster to know the difference between a major and not so major threat. I remember working with a client where we did a metaphor exercise where he pictured his as a snarling, noisy monster up on his shoulder. As we examined it, it became a barking puppy that yapped at everything that went by. His final takeaway was that he needed to spend time with it and train it on how to be the guard dog he needed it to be. See, these simple steps will help you turn that big, ugly, scary monster into your friend. He can serve you instead of holding you back. Some have even learned it's quite a thrill. I have had many people tell me many times that I'm nuts for seeking out opportunities to want to stand up in front of people. I tell them, bring it on. Because you see, I have trained my monster. You can too.